2020. Oh, I have to hold on. We're not even going to go there because I uploaded the wrong thing. It's a special day here in the lovely world of.
I'll fix it. That's good.
Like we can't, which is funny because you would think, Dave would have it down by now, but
I have found too lately, if I just let my mind drift a little bit, you still make mistakes on stuff that you've done a million times,
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome.
Ask the podcast coach for Dune. Yeah. Don't you go. All right. Ask the podcast coach for June 27th, 2020.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is for the 300th time. It's that music that means it's Saturday. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there, the man that saved me back 300 episodes ago when I was just struggling and said, hey, you want to try it with a co-host? The one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy 300. I mean, a very nice 300 accident of not really. We didn't intend to do this. This is like, hey, let's create a show about podcasting and we're going to do these things. No, we just got on here, started talking. It kind of worked. Do you think? I think if the chemistry hadn't worked, we probably would have made it 3 or 4 shows and then been like, that's good enough, right? I mean, the chemistry worked. I liked hanging out with you. So
yeah, I originally started this to test Blog Talk Radio.
Right.
And I did a lot of episodes. So I was trying to find the one where you came on. And I found a bunch that were just me, and they were painful. And I mean, really bad to listen to. And
well, you were just distracted. I remember this because I listened to him. That's why I jumped in. I was like, hey, I do live all the time. Do you want some help? And it wasn't trying to be mean or trying to be, it was just like, I want to help you do this. You're really good. I was always really, I always envied your ability to do this solo, which I can't do. Your solo podcasting is so good. And I listened to School Podcasting for a couple of years before that. Had you on my show even, I think, before that. And so just when you started doing it, I was like, yeah, just let me jump in and help you. So you have somebody else to talk while you're typing back to the chat room or getting things fixed or fixing the banner behind the screen or right. Some of those kinds of things. Yeah, it works. We do have a coffee pour this morning, Dave.
We do have a coffee pour.
Mark over at podcastbranding.co, of course, is gracious enough to support this. What else does Mark do for us?
Mark does everything. If you want a website, he will do your website. If you need some sort of lead magnet, he can do anything you want to look professional that has graphics involved. You got to go check out. Did you just burn your hand?
No, I put my finger on it and it got really hot while I was.
It's a hot pour.
It is a hot pour.
Yeah, but if you're looking for, podcast graphics, I just had him do mine. For the record, in case anybody's wondering, last week on the post show, we looked at Mark's graphics that he did for a show I'm doing called Grow Your Community Show. And I ended up with the paper dolls, but I had him make them colored. So remember last week there was, and I was like, okay, so I think I'm going to go with that. And that's the cool thing about it. He is a podcaster and he's also an award-winning graphic artist. So he actually, if he doesn't get it right, in fact, the first time he sent him over, he goes, hey, here are 3 things, here are 3 different ideas I had, or if you want, we can go back to the drawing board. So he's very open to, really make sure that when you're done, you're happy with what you got. So if you want to check him out, podcastbranding.co, and he's Canadian, so he's very polite. Podcastbranding.co, and tell Mark that you heard about it on Ask the Podcast Coach. So
did he pick up July, or do we have a July? What are we doing?
You know what? I need to ask him. We were just talking about that. The fact that wow, June is toast. It's done. It's like, yep, all right, sorry, and which means 2020 is half over. Wow, that went quick.
What have you done? Let's talk. Let's do a little pandemic review. As we think about podcasting and specifically to you, Dave. So your podcasting, do you think you did anything different, anything better, anything notable because of the pandemic? How did the pandemic? That's what I almost said. The pandemic.
Yeah.
How did that cause you to change, or did it? Are there things that you'll do different now? because of it. I don't know, just some thoughts on it as we kind of do it's not over. Like I'm not declaring that the pandemic is over. I'm just thinking, we made it through the second quarter of the year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. April, May, and June.
I think for me, I thought I was going to have more free time. And so I started a bunch of stuff, and then it dawned on me, I didn't really have that much free time.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had to back off. And for me, what I've been doing like the past month is I was gaining weight. Like, the joke is COVID-19, where the 19 stands for how much weight did you gain?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just doing stuff and like, hey, this is not working. And when you set a new record, you're like, hey, I've never been able to say I weighed 230 and now I can. I'm like, we're really going the wrong way. Cause it used to be 225 is where I would start to freak out and really chomp down. So I was like, that's why people are like, well, like, why aren't you doing Podcasters Happy Hour anymore? And I'm like, well, number one, I got a bunch of stuff I got to do now for this book. But number two, I spend an hour every day now, either walking, riding a bike, doing something to get up and get physical. And I'm really tracking and I think a lot of people can say that what changed during the pandemic is, I gained a bunch of weight. And so I just had to kind of go, look, I'm going the wrong way. And when you get older like me, losing weight gets even harder because it just is. So
it is, no, for sure. And that's been a struggle. I've worked hard to not do that. And I've been successful at some points and not successful at others. I think on the podcasting side of things, I've realized that I am not listening to the podcast the way I used to, and I'm having to find new ways. Although starting, so we have brand new studios that opened Friday at Gallup. So they finished signed off. We can take occupancy. So I went in and started moving because when we gutted that floor, the floor the old studios was on got gutted, and so I had to move the studio into my office. So I don't know, I must have done that before Christmas. 3 or 4 months I was in my office doing podcasts at Gallup, which wasn't bad, except the walls are thin, and I could hear my boss talking behind me sometimes. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'd moved all the equipment in my office. So I went in yesterday. Nobody was there. It was a ghost town, which was great. I put all the equipment in a bin and drug it over to the new studios and set up. It's really nice. Standard backdrop behind me, kind of a, like you'd see a pro, it says Gallup, all over the screen. Right. And they have a lighting bar that goes across and then down. And I think we're going to put the big screen right underneath that lighting bar. And warm colors, so that 4000K area. I'm going to add some additional lights to it as well. But so that for me, this unintended from the pandemic, but I'm getting new studios. But I kind of forgot they were coming. So like we came home, I focused solely on podcasting. I podcasted more during the pandemic at Gallup. We did, instead of 2 a week, we did probably 4 a week. So we doubled our output. So that was something for me that changed, as I just did more shows.
Yeah. I launched 2 shows that are tests that are going to die a painful, horrible death, but those are fun. So John wants to know, do you have by any chance any pictures?
No, I haven't taken them yet. I will when I go in this week. I should have yesterday when I was in there. Monday is sound check, light and sound check day. So John, I'll take some photos and post them on Twitter or something. Yeah. I'm going to go in Monday afternoon and get it, assuming I'm waiting on a piece of equipment to come. So if that's in, I'll set it up. We'll do some sound checks. We'll do some things. I don't know, Dave, if I'll podcast in it yet this week. It's here in the United States. 4th of July is Saturday. Most people are taking Friday off. I will as well. I just have one podcast this week. What?
I just get when you said that, you're like, wait, the 4th of July.
It's in a week. It's next weekend.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It's coming. It's fast, right?
Yeah.
So I only have one podcast that I may be ready by that time to podcast, and that may be a good opportunity to do it from there. So no green screen. It's definitely a printed background, and it was like Dave's background there, except it's their acoustic tiles that have been right. It looks great. I mean, it really looks. It's branded well,
and they don't need ironed. Like Dave's, although that's because it's black, you don't see that as much. But
no, John, I won't podcast Ask the Podcast Coach from there, because I'll still do that from my studios here. So that's it'll just be the Gallup ones. You have to join me starting next week. Gallup.eventbrite.com will have Thursdays if you want to come out and see them. Again, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I need to make sure the whole building was set up with white noise. And so, like, you hear that.
Yeah.
Right. That room has white noise in it. And I was like, that wasn't that we missed on that one. That one should not have. Yeah, that should not have. So I let the building guy know, and he was like, well, can you test before? Because, he's going to spend a bunch of money to pull that thing out. He's like, can you test? So I'll test Monday and Tuesday, turn the mic on, do some recordings, kind of see. It may not even pick it up. It's not that loud. You can hear it, but
it may not come through on the mics.
No, it may not. It may not make a difference.
Yeah. Brandon has a great point. He goes, something that's been harder during this pandemic is equipment. Says, I've been looking for a Rodecaster Pro and an ATEM Mini for months. I've not heard of the ATEM Mini. But I know I was all excited. I got a thing from Amazon. The Samson Q2U was on sale for $59. And I'm like, well, surely they wouldn't promote something that's not in stock. And I go running to Amazon and $59, not available. And I'm like, okay, apparently that has been set up. I'm like, so I heard, I think it was Bangs last night. We did a podcasters roundtable. Said B&H right now has if you're looking for a Q2U, I think they're in.
Yeah, they seem to have been. I'm kind of like them in Sweetwater. I'm kind of leaning on more than Amazon at this point for that kind of gear. Although I was going to pick up my podcast partner Micah. She moved, and I was going to pick her up one of those Behringer audio interfaces. Those $50 ones. It's way better than doing it via USB. And B&H is out of those as well. So those that have not, I like them. I have one. It's inexpensive. It's great for just kind of, she's weekly with me. I don't really need to put her in a Focusrite or a PreSonus.
Yeah.
That Behringer just works. It's pretty great. So yeah, they're out.
This is where you go to Best Buy, and there it is, the one and only Blue Yeti.
Well, if you can get, no. Well, maybe our Best Buy's closed still. I mean, you can go there, but you can't go in.
No.
You can't, right? Ours are still locked down.
Yeah. So the other big thing that I guess if you start this week, are you going to join the Podcast Academy?
Of course. Yes. Yeah. $50. Why wouldn't you? And it's 2 letters and a pretty awkward form. That's a long, I expected less to be honest, but it's a pretty long form with two recommendations, right? So you and I are going to swap recommendations. I'll need to find one more.
Yeah. I guess it's just a matter of, it's kind of like a cover charge in the old days of, we wanted, when I used to play a bar, it was a way to make sure that people that were in there really wanted to be there kind of thing.
Yeah.
And especially if I was in downtown was like, we need to keep like, what's the politically correct word for
let's not go there, but it slows down. The riffraff is it's the term my mom would use, keeps the riffraff out. Right. And so I like it. It's reasonable. Like I think they're doing a lot of things right, and it's probably because Rob Greenlee is doing it.
Well,
that's right. They're just doing a lot of things right. That $50 is right, and I think it goes to 100. Right. So after a certain time period, doesn't go up to 100.
It might. That's the one thing I'm really behind on. I know Rob did a webinar last Thursday, and I had it on my calendar, but just didn't get a chance to watch it live or watch it later. But I'm with you. I was, we all kind of jumped on them when we're like, look, did you guys not know there was already something called the Podcast Academy? And they did know this, and so they could have done a little bit of research, but we all I gave them, I was like, all right, I'm looking forward to, when I've heard, forget the guy's name. I want to say Hernan, the CEO of Wondery. I heard him on a couple shows, and I was like, you know what? All right, I'm going to, we're not all perfect. And then when I heard Rob was now, I guess the chair of something, and Rob even said, I didn't ask for that. He goes, they said, why don't you do that? So I just, based on the power of Rob Greenlee and how he's such a great guy. And this guy he was in podcasting before there was podcasting.
I know.
Like if you go back to like 2003, there was some really weird Microsoft thing on like Palm Pilots that he was doing.
Yeah.
So he's been syndicating stuff. Then he had a radio show for a while. And he is a guy, if you're around Rob and people start talking about different things, he will remind people the history of podcasting is based on an open source kind of thing. And let's not start roping off stuff. So so I'm going to put in my $50. If nothing else, I can't complain. We've had two different, something about downloadable media. The Association of Downloadable Media was the very first one. That was about 2005. And that kind of fell apart. And then there was a thing that Chris Curran and Gordon Firemark and Glenn the Geek tried to put together. And the problem is a whole, this thing of a podcast, I don't know, union or academy or whatever you want to call it. It takes time and it takes money. And neither of those groups had either. And so they all kind of went, and it is like trying to herd cats. Mm-hmm. So this is, you've got a lot of big players, and that's what makes a lot of people nervous. But I don't know.
No, I think it's good. I think it's good. I like it. I like where we're headed. I mean, anything worth the time, or anything worth doing, I always say is worth overdoing. But in this case, anything worth doing is worth the struggle to get it. And I again, somebody said this in the chat room, but I do this because Rob is just an amazing guy, the most patient guy in podcasting. Like you can't frazzle him. You can't. He just doesn't get. I don't think I've ever seen him lose his temper on the microphone, or and he's had some moments where he probably could have. He works with Todd, so you think at least at some point he loses patience, and he doesn't. He's just such a he's just such a good guy. So with that kind of leadership and at $50, it's just the right. They did this one right. Now we'll see if it has the effect that they're hoping for. I mean, I'm all behind it. I just like what they're trying to do with it.
Yeah, and I figure if nothing else, I'll pop popcorn and watch. But if you think, I like the fact I heard people talking a while ago about how, if we want something to be implemented now, we kind of have to talk Apple into it, because by the time you tie in not only just Apple but the people that use Apple's back end, that's like 70% of the market. And so if we came up with a way to make it easy for people to, I don't know, have a donate button in all the apps, and we got all the apps to agree, and they did and Apple didn't, well, we would kind of have maybe, let's put it this way, we would have more influence than if we were all just acting on our own. If we had a big group of people to say, hey, Apple, 30% of us are now using this thing and you don't have it. And so we'll see what happens. So it's a good direction. They're moving in a good direction. And is it going to be without, pain points and arguments, right? And, no, well, probably not, but I don't think that's bad. I don't think that we have these disagreements in the podcasting space and we work through them. I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, it doesn't need to be all sunshine and rainbows. There are times where you need to go, I don't like that. And you can state your opinion. You can do something different. It's still really open. So I like it. I like where they're headed. I wish him the best. I'm gonna join and be a part of it, and at least try to pay attention. If I didn't do it, Dave, if I didn't make the payment, I wouldn't pay attention. And so I just need to, I need to have some skin in the game on this thing, just to kind of help me kind of pay attention, because I think a group like this really has an opportunity to make some changes. On the corporate side of things, the big guys, they can make changes because they have just crap loads of cash and they're able to do these kinds of things, right? They're just able to. On the independent side, we kind of have to come together, find a consensus. That doesn't mean we all agree, by the way, that those two words are not synonymous. Find a consensus where we can, we at least, most of us can agree and move forward. Yeah, I would, I haven't heard him talk about it. I know Todd and Rob were working on, because some people are like, we need to dump RSS and go to JSON or whatever. And Rob was like, no, why don't we all work together and come up with some things we can add to RSS? And I haven't heard much about that. I know
No, it's gonna take a while, I think.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see. Banks is worried if Apple gets too involved in podcasting. Do you realize what pressure groups would do to Apple if unsavory groups used that and they enabled it? Well, that's true. It's one of those things that could be interesting. I know it's just an interesting time right now in America to see.
I think it's good. I think we needed a shakeup like this. I mean, it's been really since the 60s that we've had this kind of shakeup. And you need a good every 50 or 60 years, you kind of need a good shakeup, good question everything. Like what are we doing here? And it's uncomfortable. I mean, it makes many of us uncomfortable, but I think it's good.
Well, kind of going back to what you're talking about, one thing I think that podcasters are better at, maybe, I don't know if better is the right word, more open to, is a dialogue. Mm-hmm. I think just in general, because we do see a much wider variety of people. Podcasters Roundtable last night was interesting because you talk about, uncomfortableness. And so Ray was kind of like, look, we'd been off for quite a while. He goes, look, with all the stuff happening in the US, it really didn't seem right to let's get on and talk about microphones and such. Yeah. And so we had two people of color, and I asked them, I said, look, you can't get much whiter than me. I'm like, I am like pasty. And I said, so if I try to do the right thing and go out and purposely search for people of color to bring on my show, because maybe I need to do more of that, I said, I'm worried I'm going to now, does that make you? And I said, I don't even know what this word means. I said, I don't know if it's really nasty or bad. I said, but what about, I've always heard the word token. Yeah. So it was really cool. We had this conversation on that, but just asking the question, I was like, oh, is this I don't know if this is the wrong word.
Well, good to have that conversation in that context.
Yeah.
And to say, hey, this is something that I was having a conversation like that. And it was like, hey, it's better to try than to not. So don't if you're worried about that, don't just do it. Cause it's really important. And I myself too, even on Home Gadget Geeks, have an opportunity to present and invite more diversity on the program. And you started looking at it and I was like, yeah, I got some opportunities here. And I do better. I do better than some, but better than some is not good enough. I need to be better. I need to be better than I've been before. I need to raise my own bar, set my own standard. And so I began to do some outreach, do some things, if you've got to widen your pools, if a lot of people would say, well, I don't know anybody, or I don't know how. And it's like, well, you gotta widen who to begin with. You can't invite people, or, I guess you could just go out and start inviting people that you don't know. But I have found I need to do some things differently where I widen my pools of friends when I'm thinking about inviting a guest on the program, I have a bigger diversity in my pools to begin with. And that's just both for work and for my own personal podcast. I've got some work to do there. And it's whose responsibility is it? It's not yours to fix my show, Dave. It's me to fix my shows. Yeah.
I remember when I had Kristen Meisner, who's the author of the book, So You Want to Start a Podcast, and she is a big shot smarty pants. She's worked with WNYC and a couple other people and been on TV. And she said, there's this thing called Google that you could just put in whatever your subject is, and then, people of color or something of that. She's like, you can actually, they're out there if you just look for them. So
you're going to need to make some intentionality to it. Yeah. I think that's the key, right? It's just to be, and not to shame anybody into anything. Right. That's not what I'm here to do. But I think we can be more intentional about all those levels of diversity, not just skin color, but when we think about men and women, when we think about our gay and lesbian community, there are some opportunities for us to do that. And you can break that down. There's so many, and it's just good to get diversity of thought in here. You and I, Dave, represent a very, very small segment of thought. We just similar age, similar upbringing. And that's not bad. People still come out and listen to us. We should be shamed because of that. But we do have some opportunities to present some diversity there.
Are there new toys coming out? Chris Nessie says, anyone have any idea what the new recorder Zoom is releasing on July? That's next weekend.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, just because the Rodecaster just keeps getting better and better. It's going to be interesting to see what the Zooms and the oh man, I want to say Atari, but that's not it. It's orange. Tascam. Yeah, that sounds nothing like Atari.
No, no, not at all.
Yeah, but Tascam. I mean, all these other audio tools. It'll be interesting to see, what they come up with to. Like, hey, here's our version of that.
Speaking of July 2nd, next Saturday is July 4th. I mentioned that as we were coming in, right? I think that's Saturday. Are we going to podcast the morning of 4th of July? I'm in if you're in.
I'm in. Okay. Yeah, I got nothing.
I'm not going to blow my.
Oh, is that? I'm glad you're back. Okay. Good. You said I'm not going to blow, and I'm like, no. You should probably finish that.
Yeah, I'm not going to blow my hand off until the evening. So we're getting. Is that me or is that you? I guess it'd be hard to tell, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. Okay. So July 4th, we're here.
We're here.
Show next Saturday.
Yeah. We'll. Are you having? I keep hearing about this on the news. Are you having issues with people setting off fireworks at night?
Not yet. We will next week.
Yeah.
Starting Monday, it will every night. I mean, it'll be a preamble like you've never heard before. But yeah, people do.
I had one night where there was somebody who had gone out and bought some, but poor Danny Pena, who lives in New York City, and it sounded like they were coming off his roof. It was interesting that he's just sitting there and he's got his phone. He's like, every night, this is what I hear. And you just hear, it's like he's in a war zone. I'm like,
boom, big thundering booms. Well, and I think this year it's gonna be really bad because we've been cooped up for 3 months.
Yeah.
And everybody's just, for some, they haven't spent any money because they haven't been doing anything. And I think that's just going to go into fireworks. And it's going to be I think you're going to have a Thursday, Friday, Saturday just blowout.
Yeah.
And so if you have dogs, I know a lot of folks have dogs and cats that are sensitive to this. And it's really hard and I know some of our friends, I mean, I have some combat veteran friends that this is a struggle. So,
yeah. Zoom on their Facebook has an announcement that says on July 2nd, Zoom will debut the newest, most advanced, most adaptable handheld recorder ever made.
Awesome. Well, good. It's, I didn't see the handheld market for recorders doing what it's doing. I just never, I bought a Tascam 7 or 8 years ago, a Tascam 01, pretty good mics. It does its job. It does what it's supposed to do. It doesn't have any inputs or anything like that. It was $99, so not a lot. And I thought that would be it. And I just never saw this handheld. And I never saw podcasters moving. I never saw it as a viable, like I would put it on my desk and use it as a recorder. I just not those kinds of recorders. I just didn't see that market coming. I thought they would be like desktop recorders, or like back like when we used to buy DVD players and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Thought it'd be more like that as opposed to, hey, here's a handheld recorder and it makes sense. It totally makes sense. I just did not see that coming when those Zoom and the H6, and I thought, these guys have overkicked their coverage. This is just not going to be right. I was totally wrong. Like they have definitely dominated the market.
I'd like to see somebody, I forget the name of the company, but they've come out with those built-in microphone that's also a recorder. I love that concept.
Yeah.
For if you do a lot of traveling, I'd be interested to see if they come out with. I doubt that's what Zoom is doing. They're probably just going to come out with the 6N or something like that. Then it'll be fun.
H6 Plus.
Yeah.
Follow the Apple model, right? H6 Plus.
Well, how could you improve the 6? I mean, unless you've already got 6 inputs, which is probably over. It does multi-track.
Okay. And I don't use one, so I'm probably
that's
not.
me. I literally have one in my closet. It's still in the box. I bought it because I was going to answer some questions for somebody, and I was able to just download the manual and so I always have one in case somebody gets stuck with one. But
I got recorded on one. So when I was in London back in December, which seems like 10 years ago at this point, but when I was back in London, I had a podcaster. We did a recording. He interviewed me. And we used an H6 and he put it in the middle of the table. And I went back and listened to that podcast. I wasn't really, I mean, the content was great and the interview was fantastic, but the sound quality for me in that scenario, I was like, we probably could have done better.
Did you have separate mics or just use the built-in?
Use the built-in mic.
The other thing that always got me nuts about the built-in microphone of any Zoom product, H1, H2, and it's really like anything else, is I like, even with the windscreen on those things, I would get popping P's like nobody's business. And I was like, to where you're trying to, hold it in the same place. Cause I would try to, like on my weight loss show, I'd go out and walk around the block and record and talk. And it was kind of cool because you'd get the whole, you'd hear the atmosphere of the cars. And I remember once I was walking and a dog like came at me barking and I about pooped my pants. So that was fun, but
I wouldn't use it that way. I wouldn't use it with the mic unless I was doing back and forth.
Yeah.
Like this,
Yeah. If anytime I've ever, even when I use my little H1, I have my giant squid audio lavalier mics that I plug in. I've never used a built-in mic. Not that it's horrible, but it just doesn't, it's like, it would be if nothing else, you can use the built-in, microphone and kind of go from there. So
just never been impressed with them. They're great mics from what I hear, those things. I just have not, the couple times I've done it, I'm sure other folks are doing it better. I just haven't been super impressed. It's just like, it still sounds roomy. It still sounds far away. And I just like the audio up close. I am an up close kind of guy. And so it's just like, let's get up on those microphones. Let's get close to them because they won't struggle as much to hear you.
Jim, when I tried this last week, I locked up. So we'll see what happens.
Is it time for a mid-show coffee pour?
It is time for a mid-show coffee pour. Thank you, Mark, over at podcastbranding.co. But we also want to thank our awesome supporters. If you would like to be an awesome supporter, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And right now, still open, the Teacher's Pet. If you want some one-on-one consulting at a discounted rate, check that out, as well as our $20 supporters. We always want to thank people like Greg over at debtshepherd.com, Glenn the Geek Hebert over at horseradionetwork.com, Max Truscott up in the air at aviationnewstalk.com, Shane at spybrary.com, Carl White down at lifeinthecarolinas podcast.com, Kim Craggy at toastmasters101.net. So if you're starting your Toastmasters journey, Ed Sullivan over at soniccupcake.com. And I thought we'd thank our $10 supporters this week. So we're looking at people like Frasley over at b-great.today, Dr. Norm Chapin at beyondthebedside.net, Jeffrey at Podnuts, that's PODNUTZ, Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com, Kyle Bondo at GagglePod, Katie Holmes at outwittrade.com, Martin at christianstt.com, I guess is, I had to think about that. Michael Delaney at babymountainradio.com, Nick Suberling Subs at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com, Sean Park at BeYourOwnNerd.com, Josh Rivers at PodcastGuyMedia.com. And again, if you want to be an awesome supporter, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And also, it's another month, but now available for pre-order, schoolofpodcasting.com/profit book. It's the book from Dave Jackson, Profit from Your Podcast, Proven Strategies to Turn Listeners into a Livelihood. That has been pushed back to August. And the reason for that, it turns out, is our good friend COVID-19.
It's probably better. You're probably better off.
Well, it is. It gives me more time to record the audiobook. Which with July 4th next weekend, I'm like, hey, it's a holiday. That means Friday I'm probably off. And I'm like, because I just was saying I need to take a vacation, even though I'm not going to go anywhere, to record the audiobook and just set up something probably in my closet, maybe even, and do that just to go for the ultimate, clean recording kind of thing. So
do you have kind of an agreement with them of when you can release the audiobook? Or are you just, do you have a gentleman's agreement that you're not going to release the audiobook until I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds. So in this case, but from what I understand, I talked to David Hooper and he said, if the book was ready right now, he goes, for your audiobook, he goes, it would take about a month. He goes, they're really, again, cause they're probably, everybody's operating on a, skeleton crew. So, cause I asked him, I go, when am I going to get like a copy of the book? Because they're still technically, we're working on the back cover and a couple other things.
And she said, well, and I go, look, I don't mind bad news. I just want to set my expectations. They're like, normally, we would break open a case and send you however many books are in your contract. But right now we're not shipping anything less than a case. And she's like, because again, the warehouse people are, just doing the basics. So it should be fun. I see a question in the chat room I want to throw in here. It's from John. Oops, that's not the one I wanted.
But congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing I liked about it, to go back just to toot my own horn, I have, for some people, I had to ask for like a blurb. And some people, these people with integrity, like, hey, can I read the book first before I say? And I gave one to Chris Kermitzos, and he's like, dude. And I'm like, what? He goes, I read your book. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, no, like, it's really good. And I was like, oh, what? Because I know Chris would say, a lot of fluff in there, but he was like, no, it's really good. So, but John says, when sharing supporters graphics during the coffee pour, are you sharing your screen? What function inside StreamYard enables this? There is I'm not sharing anything during the coffee pour. I guess I could bring up Mark's website. It's a button at the bottom of the screen that says share screen. And so, it's,
oh, you can't see it. It's for us. It's down there. But,
and at that point, if I share my screen, if you ever wonder what's going on behind the scenes that's my Trello board. So I had a whopping two questions here. I was talking to Jim this morning that I went into Podcast Movement. I'll go into the Podfest, some of the bigger podcasts about podcasting groups in Facebook. And they were all literally, what's the best way to do an interview? How many downloads is good? Where should I host my file? What microphone should I use? And it was just that over and over. And not that those are bad questions. There is a part of you that still wants to kind of go, have you ever heard of search?
Well, they want their own answer, and that's okay. That's what those groups are there for.
Yeah. So, Dave says,
hey, before you go on to that one, I can share my screen too. So this is for John. So Dave, I'm sharing something as well. So I could share that. Last week I bought a generator. Just because, I don't want in case something happens, lose power, whatever. I want to be able to podcast. And it came Friday. Did we talk about this at the show last week? Did I mention this during the show? I think I bought a generator. It fell off the truck. They broke it.
Oh, so man.
I took it back to Lowe's on Saturday and they replaced it. So Lowe's has done a really good job. A new one actually is at the store waiting for me right now. But I didn't say all that. I kind of did. I think as a podcaster, I want to have some kind of backup. I'm going to wire this thing into the house too for certain circuits. So in case the power goes down, I can fire this up, enable certain circuits like the ones all my computers are on. So I could still podcast even in the midst of a power outage. But I also brought it up so I could say, John, you can also have your guests share. Yeah. And then when I'm done sharing, Dave can let it go.
And I can zoom in on Jim.
That's pretty scary. Don't do that again, Dave.
And I can just be me. And that whole
you can in StreamYard now. You can even change. You have the ability to change the names down here, so you can say you want.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's brand new.
How do I do that?
Oh, so Jim, hover over me, and there's 3 dots now in your control panel. And if you click on it, it'll say edit. I think it says edit their name or something like that in there. I don't have the control panel, so
I do not. Oh, down here.
Yeah, down on the bottom. So in my area, it has 3 dots. If you click on that, you get the ability to do some things.
There you go.
And change. There you go. See, I like that. I like being big shot smarty pants.
Well, that's interesting. That's kind of cool because some people like, oh, hey, I typed in my name wrong or whatever.
No, right. It gives you the ability to do it. Some new. By the way, check out StreamYard on Facebook or their site. They had a big release this last week, and so a bunch of new things came.
The other thing, going back to when we originally started, we used to change technology all the time. I have not played with it yet, but I've been told that Restream.io now has their own StreamYard thing, their own studio. And I was like, well, that would be interesting because the one thing I need to figure out how to do this, if I go into Facebook, now I understand I need to make my Facebook, whatever this is, event open to the public so I could see, because if you're on Facebook right now and you're typing in the chat room, I can't see your comments here on StreamYard, because that's my only thing is like I can't see all the different chat rooms. If I went to Twitch and all these other places, their chats aren't coming back to me, and I'm way too ADD to watch this chat room and Facebook and Twitch and all these other places, Periscope and all these other places. So if you could,
StreamYard continues to unify the chats, so that's been good. It's not perfect, but it's better than a sharp stick in your eye.
Yeah.
Carrie asks, is StreamYard mainly for live shows, or are there other use cases? And the answer is yes. It works great for live, but Dave, I've used it. You can on the paid option, you can just record right to their servers and get full resolution on it. Sometimes when you send it to YouTube, they compress it.
Right.
So when it's 720 is their highest. You can't get 1080 on this, but you can get 720 in non-compressed audio by just recording it, and they keep it for 7 days. So you could record your own podcasts on these and not broadcast them. Yeah. I've done our church announcements this way. So for the last 8 weeks, I've been the service host. So, hey, welcome to church. Glad you're here. Here's some announcements. I recorded those solo on StreamYard just to their servers, then download them, edit them, and then sent them to our church which is like a podcast. It's the same workflow. Yeah. So you can do it that way too.
Yeah. And if you want to do an interview, but not have it be streamed.
Multi-stream, yes, Brandon. You can multi-stream as well. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you need the paid plans to do that and such, but yeah, you can. And we're doing that right now, right? We're multi-streaming to YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah. So, and then I noticed this last night when I got out of the Podcasters Roundtable. They said, hey, you can now join StreamYard. So if you wanted to go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join and you're on your phone, in theory, you could jump on in to, you don't have to be at home to be on a StreamYard call. So that's kind of
you can start one now too. Like you couldn't before. You could not start one from your phone or a tablet or whatever. You can now, a tablet, an iPad.
Yeah.
No, not multi. So David asked, are you recording separate audio channels in StreamYard? No.
But if you're using a Rodecaster Pro, I could have Jim on one and me on the other. I don't do that because Jim has no dogs barking in the background. I don't really have to worry about it.
Only spilling things. I usually only spill things.
So, but Dave says, Coach Dave says, been watching some Joe Rogan for insight on interviewing. What is your personal secret for creating quick rapport with guests and drawing out the best content guests have to offer? Can I say one thing about Joe Rogan? I started watching Joe Rogan, or at first I started listening, and Bill Burr was on. And Bill Burr is one of the few comedians I hear that actually does like material in his podcast. Like he has like the Monday Morning Rant or something like that. So Bill's pretty funny, and he's also pretty politically incorrect, and he's pushing the envelope. So Bill Burr's on Joe Rogan. And I'm going to say a good 10% of that was them talking about animals getting killed. And like a praying mantis killed a lizard. And so Joe's assistant gets the video. So I'm listening to the podcast and you hear Joe go, oh, there it is. Oh, check it out. Ooh, see that? Oh, that's, wow. Did you? Oh, all right. And I'm like going, guys. And so that's where I think Joe really is a video podcast that puts out the podcast as an audio. The other thing was that really intrigued me to where I went to the YouTube video of Joe Rogan to watch that. And while he's going, ooh, look at there. Ooh, they didn't put the actual video that they were watching. You're watching Joe going, ooh, look at that. And I'm like, they did that a lot to where I was like, wow, this is really like, who's editing this?
Takedown on that.
Yeah. But going back to Dave's question, Jim, personal secret for creating back rapport.
I think one is being good to your guests before the guests that you're talking to, like so the interviews that I do for Gallup, lots of times the folks who are coming on will watch previous shows. And if they sense that you have good rapport with previous guests, that makes them feel more comfortable. So just make sure you're being kind to the guests that you have on before. And then I always start when the guests come out, we start 30 minutes ahead of time, regardless, no questions asked. It's always 30 minutes and you don't need it all, but it gives us some time to chit chat. And I just find that is the most helpful. Even for a 30-minute interview, I'm going to have them connect 30 minutes ahead of time. And so, hey, how's the family? What's going on? How you been successful? What kind of things are great? Get them talking about some real positive things that are off interview topic. Oftentimes I find that helps settle them down quite a bit. And then you can just ask some really good questions. And I think you have to be good at asking questions. This is not a skill that people are just born with. I think you have to get, some are better than others. Let's just say there's some natural talent for some and others. But I think asking great questions, Dave, and working with guests takes a little practice. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. And so I just think that's one of those skills you need to think about and be intentional about and practice.
Yeah, for me, I always try to, anytime I'm interviewed, I try to really take inventory of my brain of how do I feel being interviewed. And I really hate it when, especially shame on me, if I haven't done my homework, because I always try to listen to at least 2 episodes of a show I'm going on. So I have a kind of a clue of who my audience is, but there are still times I still don't know who I'm talking to or things like that. So I always try to let my, if it's not a podcaster, I let them know this is not live radio. And if there's anything they want edited out, I can edit it out. Or if they mess something up, it's not a big deal. I can edit this out. I'm going to make you sound great. And really for me, if I was doing an interview right now, I'd grab this envelope and I would put it in front of me. I would grab although I don't like this pen because it has a clicker and I'm tempted to do this. And then it's just a matter of asking Jim a question and then shutting up and listening to Jim. And if he says something that's really good, I'm going to write down a single word or 2 words so I can go back to that. And then I go right back to listening. And then on my other piece of paper, I probably have my 6 questions that I want to really ask Jim. And for me, the coolest tip I've heard in a while was from Eric Newsom from NPR, who has the book Make Noise. And he said, if you have a guest, is there one question that only they can answer? So for him, I asked him, like, how'd you get involved in NPR? Like, what was the path to NPR? Because he could answer that. And he's a guy that's worked for NPR. So that's, and I now try to, there's a show I listen to, I just found it called Content Heroes. And it's not bad, but the guy starts off every interview with, tell us a little bit about your backstory and what you do. And every time I hear that, I'm like, that's just not my way. Would be like, if I was interviewing Jim about his podcast, I might say, Jim, when did you know you wanted to be a podcaster? Mm-hmm. Like, let's get to because there's a great book called Storyworthy by a guy named Matthew Dix. And he says, when you have a really good story, you want to start as close to the end as you can, because a lot of the backstory you don't need. So I don't need to know that Jim went to, the whatever, Nebraska, blah, 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 and did this and yada, 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 and Army and yada. Yeah, he's got a great backstory, but he's here to talk about blank. So the sooner I can get him to the content that my audience wants to hear, I think that's a good tip. Well,
and I think the other thing it kind of alluded to in the chat room is, so you have a guest on, you've done some research, you know the answer. Don't ask the question and then answer it yourself. Let them answer it. Like, even if you know it, you only know it so you can ask great questions. You shouldn't be the one. Now, confirm it. So, hey, Dave, what would be good? Back. Tell me about your live experience when you first started podcasting live. How was that? Now, I know the answer to that question because I was there with you, right? But I want to hear it from you. Then once you've answered it, I can confirm some of the high points as a host and say, yeah, I remember this and I remember that. But I think too many, and I hear this all the time, is they ask the question, they don't even pause, then they answer it for the guest. And then and then they wait, like, do you want to add anything to that? Because I was just smarter than you. And I think it's terrible.
I hate when they turn it into multiple choice, because a lot of times they'll do that. If there's and it's because we hate the awkward pause. And so they'll ask the question, they're like, well, was it this or was it that? Or which is kind of a yes or no situation. And I've heard answers before where somebody will ask a really good question and I'm like, ooh, that's, and there's this like 1.5-second pause and the person will go, well, was it this or was it that? Yeah. Or was it really this? And I'm like, you've just now made it ABC. And if you would just shut up, chances are answer D is where they were going to go, but they just need a second to think about it. that is one that I will pound the dashboard if I'm driving along. I'm like, you shouldn't have done that. You ruined it.
No,
it's just hard.
I'm sure you've done this too, but I sometimes have outsmarted myself on asking a question where I tried to phrase it in such a way that I thought was so eloquent, and then the guest goes, I didn't really understand that question. And you're like, I know, that's because I'm a jackass. So, you also make it simple. Like, make your questions simple and let them, and then you can follow up with, you can start peeling the onion as you go, but you don't have to come out with a book that's a question that's 15 minutes long and the guest is like, hey, are you ever going to let me talk? Kind of thing. I've heard hosts do that as well.
That's something Eric has pointed out, Eric K. Johnson, on the podcast review show, where somebody will ask a question and they'll go, Jim, what was it like when you started your podcast? Because yada, 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 and there was a time, the thing, and then you do all this setup, yada, yada, and the thing, and blah, 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 blah. What do you think? And Jim's going, what was the question again? So it's better if you go, when you started there, there was this and that, and things were different, and along the years and blah, blah, blah. So boom, question. And a lot of times what I will do is the things I cut out of my interview are almost always me, because somebody will say something about, I did this thing, this happened, and it's a me too without the hashtag, but somebody will say, I did this thing and I had a client that did such and such and such. And I will go, oh man, I've had that. I had a guy that did this and it was crazy and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I cut that out because they've already made the point. I'm just that, but it's just me, again, building that rapport with my guest, and like, oh, I know exactly what that's like. That's that. And we exchange stuff. And I am horrible at asking questions. I engage my mouth before my brain is done. So I'll be like, so you said the thing was going to do the such. So like, wait, when did you know you were going to do that? And I will get all that whole first part out. I laugh when I hear it. I'm like, wow, that was very Dave Jackson of me. But the whole point for me of an interview is to make the guest sound good, but also I don't want to look like a moron. So anything that isn't needed, I will get that out.
Well, there's a fine line there, right? In between looking like a moron and looking like you know what you're doing. And you just don't want to do everything for the guest. You really kind of want them to, you want to highlight them. Remember, they're there for you. And so don't steal it from them. Like, don't steal their thunder. If you can at all avoid it. And it's a hard thing to do. Interviewing people is hard. And I think it takes practice. So I just encourage folks, if they're thinking about doing an interview show, listen to some good interviewers and then make it your own thing. Don't be a Larry King, or don't be a Joe Rogan, or whatever, right? Don't be them. You be you. Ask the questions that make sense to you. Do it in a style. Develop a style that makes sense for you. You'll be the most comfortable in it, and you'll get better at it.
Carrie says the whole tell me your life story starting point drives me nuts. Not totally the same, but I watched a webinar the other day, and the guy spent 23 minutes giving his backstory. Yeah, that's and
I got a funny story. So okay. I went to an event with Steve Wozniak.
Okay.
And so Steve gets up and says, well, I was, thanks for having me. I was born, and went 45 minutes on birth to high school. Like, just, yeah. And then he looks at this may be 10 years ago now, but he looks at down at the front table, the host, and says, how much time did you want me to take? And a huge mistake. The person says, just keep going, Steve, you're fine. Like, so he then, the meat of his story is the stuff he did post high school with phone freaking and Apple and Captain Crunch whistle and all those things, right? All the stuff Steve is known for. He hadn't even got to that, but we knew where he went to elementary school and what his parents were like and his high school experience. And so that is a dangerous question to, if you're going to say life story or whatever, tell us, I think you got to have those a little more, or at least set your guest up to say, hey, this is an area I want to zero in. The audience was a tech audience. We wanted to zero in on his experience of, his phone freaking experience and what he did to start Apple and his relationship to Steve Jobs. Some of those kinds of things. That's what people wanted to hear. It wasn't that, it was cool to hear where we went to high school and some of those kinds of things, but you got to be really careful on that. Sorry, I cut you off on that one.
No, that's again, why are you bringing somebody on? And I just hate the whole, and to me, sometimes if they've delivered value, now my audience might want to know, well, how did that person get here? Then I'll be like, well, when did you, like, give us a little bit of the backstory? But I don't start with the backstory because I don't care about it. Frank says Dick Cavett was the worst. Didn't know how to shut up. Kept interrupting guests. Dick Cavett was a guy that was kind of like wanted to at times show that he was a smart, progressive.
Yeah.
You know,
amazing voice though, and a thinker. Carl Sagan was this way too. Like he was used to being interviewed, so like he could talk, and it was tough to get. You could see like it was tough to get a word in edgewise with Carl Sagan. He had a lot of things to say when he'd do that, and his questions. If he was going to ask a question, he'd qualify it for a month to get there. You know, so
yeah, it takes
smart
a while.
guy, super smart guy. But yeah, I could see that from Dick Cavett. That goes way back.
Yeah, the thing about there was an interesting thing with Dick Cavett and Muhammad Ali. Like I didn't realize. But Dick Cavett was just smart that he knew Muhammad Ali was just a great guest and like just ask him some stuff and shut up. But there were times when they kind of got a little spar, you know, they would kind of spar at each other and things like that. But I think that was on Amazon, if I remember right. But it was interesting just watching Dick Cavett and the fact that I'll give him credit. He knew who he was talking to. Like it was obvious he had done some research and things of that nature. Did have another, kind of gear question in here. Says, hey guys, been listening for a little bit. Got a question. I have the Roadcaster ordered from Sweetwater and they mentioned beginning of July. Have you got any updates on when that's going to be available? That would be a Sweetwater question. I mean, it's a matter of, we talked about this a little earlier in the show today, and the fact that it's hard to get gear right now because, you know, we've set records in May and June for new podcasters. So everybody's just jumping on the podcasting bandwagon. It's hard to find microphones. It's hard to find the Roadcaster, you know, so.
Didn't we hear Daniel say somewhere that like it's double? Was that on a Podcasters Roundtable? Something that it was like April was a huge number and then May was double what April was.
Yeah. It's crazy.
What's that on? Where did I heard him say this?
It might've been Pod News. Yeah.
I think it was Podcasters Roundtable. I think you guys talked about the last show.
Yeah.
He was talking about stats.
Going back to interviewing here, Dan says, I tell my guests I'll record an introduction to set them up later. I do that a lot too. Verify their name and pronunciation. Boy, that's a good one.
Oh, God,
and a lot of times,
mistake. Oh.
I always go back and listen to sometimes if I'm on somebody's show, I'll listen to their show. But in some cases, if I don't know, if it's somebody I'm bringing on, I'll go see where they've been interviewed to see how they do pronounce their name. But yeah, that's one you don't want to realize 5 seconds before you press record. Oh crap. How do you say Mazagati?
Nazagati.
Yeah.
Nazasaki, something like that.
And he said, but
I screwed it up.
Yeah. Then I get to the content.
I asked them, I'm getting to the point. I'm so bad at this. Like, this is like, I need to fix this as part of my personality. I am terrible at pronouncing people's names. And so I've been asking them early, like, okay, pronounce it the way you want it to be pronounced. What do you want me to call you? Right. And, you know, is it just as a perfect example, actually, a guy that I work with, his name is Muhammad. We've been calling him Mo just because that seems easy.
Right.
And so everybody in the company has been calling him Mo. And so I had him on and I've worked with him. I mean, he's been a Gallup for a long time and I've worked with him before. And I just said, what do you want us to call you? Like, is it Mo or Muhammad? He goes, actually, I don't like Mo. I really like Muhammad. And I was like, both Adam and I, who was doing the interview, were like, oh, and you could see the fear in our eyes of like, oh my God, we have been calling this guy the wrong name at our company for 5 years.
Wow.
And so I think it's just really important that you have that really candid conversation and say, what do you want to be called? What do you want me to refer to you as? Doctor. This is an area some are, listen, they did a lot of work to get that doctorate. You That's better right. Call him Dr. Smith or Dr. Jones. I like Dr. Jones because it's Indiana Jones. But if some of them are like, no, do not do not refer to me as doctor. I do not. That is not. I do. So understanding that and getting that out of the way early, I think is good. I have made the mistake. I'm sure nobody listening has made this mistake, but I have made the mistake of just kind of assuming, and then you kind of blow through it and you realize after the fact, oh man, you really screwed that up. So ask the freaking name.
Exactly. Well, hey, it's we're gonna talk more about interviews. I see the chat room is firing up more questions for us, but it's about that time. So Jim, what's coming up on the AverageGuy.tv? Dr. Collison.
Thank you. We are, I don't have a doctor. We are talking summer lawn care and technology. You know, we did a spring episode where we talked about that. We're going to do that through the summer series. And so we talked about summer lawn care. So kind of a fun episode to get in there, a little bit of technology in there as well. It'll post later this weekend out at the AverageGuy.tv.
And on the School of Podcasting, it's kind of a slant on because of my podcast, because I got a cool because of my podcast story. But what we're going to spin that into is the trickle down effect. I don't even want to know if I want to say trickle down, because some people hear that and then they think about Ronald Reagan and then they get upset. Yeah. But just the fact that you don't realize talking into a microphone in your basement, like what can happen. And so I've had a few people send in some things, and I have to figure out how to spin this, because I don't want it to sound like, look at me, I've done all these things and people have gone on to do. I have to figure that part out, but that's what it's going to kind of be. I have a couple different examples of people going, well, because this and that happened, and then this happened, and that kind of thing. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking a little bit like we did today about the Podcast Academy. And I'm trying to think what else is coming, but you'll have to tune in, schoolofpodcasting.com. But thanks to the chat room. As always, got 38 people watching right now. That's very, very cool. We're here every Saturday, including July 4th. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/live. And if you're watching live now and you want to jump on in, it's askthepodcastcoach.com/join. So thanks for 300 episodes. Stick around for 300 more. And we'll be right back with some post-show. I'm trying to think of what other what is that titles I could give you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm missing the the post-show pour.
Post-show pour.
Let's see here. Brandon says the worst part about people who are used to being interviewed is they answer all the questions with the same answers. Yep. I love when you ask them a question and they're just so used to being interviewed, they just go to their first answer. So somebody's like, so Dave, what's your favorite type of pizza? And I go, blue. You know, or it's like they just have an answer. It's like, well, I remember when I was started off and or the other one is, well, I talk about this in the book. Yeah, I'm not going to be that guy. I talk about this in the book. I'm like, yeah, we understand that. The host mentioned you have a book at the beginning of the interview. You don't need to keep reminding people that it's in the book. If you want to build a brand around yourself, not as an interviewer, is it a good strategy to make an interview show? If you want to build a brand, any tips on how to, here's a big word, conciliate? That's a big one.
I don't know if I know what that means.
And that's me. I'm like, here's what I always say with interviews. When you start a podcast, it doesn't have to be solo show or interview. In fact, I recommend both. When you do an interview, you grow your network. When you do a solo show, you grow your influence. But what if you're like Jim? Jim just likes interviews. He's not a big fan of the solo show. What I would recommend then, how do you build your brand? Because we just made the guests look like a genius. How do I get some of that genius to rub off on me? It's what I call the Jerry Springer. So you get done and you go, what did we learn today? You know, we talked to Jim Collison. He's a great guy, theaverageguy.tv. I love the fact that Jim loves barbecue. I love barbecue. I'm a big fan of pork. And you start to share a little bit about you, but also maybe add on some things there so that at the end, your audience is still getting to know you a little bit. That would be my advice. Jim, do you ever do that? Is that just a...
Yeah. You know, personal brand is an interesting dynamic. I don't know if there's a if there's a way, say like, oh, this is the way to get it done or do this.
That's a great point.
Be honest and be truthful. Be yourself. Like create a brand, because you could kind of fake a brand for a while. Like, but Dave, we've done 300 shows here. That's 6 years of this. 6 years of Saturdays that we have been together doing these things. There is no way I could fake a personality for 6 years. Just not going to happen. So I just need to be me in that, and I need to be the best version of me. Does that mean I need to be like off the chain and wild and crazy? Well, maybe. Like if that's the thing I want to be, right? And so you can kind of tweak it. You can kind of practice it. You can kind of be versions of yourself, but be the one I think you're the most comfortable with. But listen to your audience. What do they like? We interviewed somebody from Southwest Airlines on Friday talking about how Southwest has handled the pandemic, right? It was kind of an amazing story, and they got a long way to go on this. We got done, and when we get done and we go off, off air, I always ask the guest, how'd we do? Like, how'd you feel about this? And then, do you have any feedback for me? That's the most important feedback you'll ever get, right there. Listen to that feedback. And I continually get feedback from the guests like, man, you made that really easy for me. That's the number one feedback I get from folks that I interview now. Okay, that's a signal for me. What I'm doing, I'm doing right. Because if they're saying it's easy, that's what I want. That's the brand that I want. So Dave, how do I know? I have to ask. I got to get some feedback. I got to do a survey. I got to say, hey, how'd I do? How did it go? Can you give me any constructive feedback on that?
Well, I went to social San Diego, some online thing. It was all about social media. And the reason I went is at night they had virtual meetups. And so I was in this, Zoom breakout room, and this guy's like, oh, Dave Jackson. He's like, oh, I listened to your show. And the first thing out of my mouth was, what would you like to hear in the future? Like, is there something? I'm like, oh, cool, listener. Tell me what I'm doing right. Tell me what I could do better, that whole 9 yards. And somebody else popped in. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just doing market research right here. But
I always say, when people all the time, we get guests on. We've been doing it long enough now on the Gallup side that I get guests that have listened to a lot of what we do. And they would say, oh, I've listened to a lot of you. And I always go, first of all, sorry, you had to listen to me for so long. They're like, no. They always say, no. And I'm like, well, hey, thank you. When you get a chance to talk to one of your listeners face to face, I always try to thank them for listening. Thank you for listening. And people will say, oh, this is so great to talk to you. And I'm like, let me be honest. It's more important that I get to talk to you, because I do this job. I never get to see you. You hear me all the time, but I never get to hear you. Your voice is actually really important to me. And then go into give me some feedback. Because Dave, you don't get those kinds of opportunities to have that face-to-face conversation. And if you're missing it by just letting them appreciate you, and that's important too. Right. But I think it's a great time to ask that question. What could we do different? How else can I help? What could be cool?
Yeah. And that's one of those where you have to let the awkward silence go.
Yeah.
Because especially if you say, what can I be doing better? They're going to go, oh, I love the show. It's I don't know. And then you don't say anything. They'll go, well, the whole thing with the cat is kind of on my nerves, or whatever it is. Like they'll give you something if you just shut up. And again, they're not saying your show stinks. I'm looking for any way to improve it. And if they don't, then I'll, if it gets way long, I'm like, well, any topics you'd like to hear in the future. So
R.I.P. Bernie. R.I.P. Yeah. Brandon asked a great question about, is there a difference between conversation and an interview? And I think there is. This is conversation, you and I, right? We interview each other, but right. I think it's more conversational. I think in an interview is trying to pull out from the guest. Hey, an interview is letting them talk more than you do.
I thought about this. I have a friend that I've known since the 6th grade, and it's funny because I'm 55 and he is still, quote, my best friend. It's just the title he's earned, and it's hilarious because when we get on the phone, we pick up right where we left off, and we talk guitars and hair metal and, whatever. It's the same conversation over and over. So that is a conversation. I think what I'm seeing is people think, well, that's real. and it's a conversation, that should be a podcast. But you're also not going to get any of the Jimmy Haben references that we laugh about every time. And you're not going to get about, Wiedemann and all this other weird stuff, because that's all inside jokes. And I think that's where sometimes I think people think I'm going to make money talking to my friend about guitars. And I'm like, yes, that's a conversation and it might be interesting. I just don't think you're going to quit your day job so you can talk about guitars with your best friend forever, that whole 9 yards. So I think sometimes people get those a little confused. Carrie says, that's a good point, Jim, that you can be authentic and also still have different versions of yourself. Boss me is different than TikTok me. And then both me.
Well, Gallup me is a little bit different than Ask the Podcast Coach, which is a little bit different than Home Gadget Geeks. I have different roles in these, now they're all very similar, right? But I am way relaxed here. Like, cause it's just us hanging out in the community, having a good time. I feel the most free on Ask the Podcast Coach. And it's one of my favorite things to do. I just love being here. Home Gadget Geeks is fun, but I'm a host. I gotta keep the thing moving along, right? I have to keep it moving. On Gallup, I've got to worry that I'm representing the Gallup brand. So I need to be more professional. Although I still am me there. It's still, people giggle and like, I can't believe you said that. And I'm like, well, somebody needed to, right. And so it's a different, but those are all versions of me. I'm not faking, and I'm not trying to be Larry King on not trying to be Larry King on that. I'm trying to be me.
John from Poughkeepsie. Yeah. Can you post? If somebody wanted to hear your Gallup stuff, obviously, is there anything that's public?
Oh, it's all public. Yeah, no, it's 100%. Gallup.com/Clifton Strengths, all one word. Gallup.com/Clifton Strengths is the landing page for it, John. If you go, there'll be a webcasts drop down. You can see Called to Coach and Theme Thursday. Each one of those posts has the audio and video. We have a YouTube channel. It's just Clifton Strengths, so you can find us on YouTube. John wants to know if we have adopted a TikTok persona. Jim says no.
I have not. I normally am not a conspiracy theory kind of guy. I heard so much about TikTok and being owned by China and blah, 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 enough to where I went, first of all, I had to realize that's another social media outlet that I would have to create content for. Yeah. And I just went, like right now, I'm so barely on Instagram. I'm like, I'm like, not sure what's the point, kind of thing. Yeah. And I've heard it's funny. Like I heard there's a lot of goofiness on TikTok and everybody wants to see me.
It's good entertainment. It's really good entertainment. Like from what I've seen, I know folks who just watch a ton of TikTok, and I just haven't gotten into it.
But I thought about I should go over and at least get my, get School of Podcasting, get Dave Jackson. If it's not, I'm sure it's not available at this point. There's just way too many Dave Jacksons, doggone it. But, but anyway, so I have that's just one I was like, you know what? I'm barely on Instagram. If I fire up TikTok, it's just another.
Yeah, I would do Instagram long before I do TikTok at this point. If I was on neither, and I only had time to spend on one, I would spend more time on Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Again, that's where my persona probably lands the best.
Yeah.
There are some who are killing it on TikTok. And so that's if you've got the talent to do TikTok stuff, I don't, but if you do, great, do it, go for it.
Yeah. My dancing shoes were hung up many moons ago. I actually had dancing shoes at one point. I would go out to the clubs and I had dress shoes that were really smooth on the bottom. So I could get my groove on. I did have one question. I thought this was interesting. This was from the Podcast Movement Facebook group from Neil Clark. Says, I've just a real nightmare. That's what it says. I think he says I'm in a real night. Anyway, I moved my podcast from Podbean to Anchor.fm, mainly because of financial because it's free. Anyway, everything was going well after importing my episodes when all of a sudden Anchor shut me down and said that I had infringement issues. What they're referring to is I have music belonging to another owner, which I have permission to use and play. I interview unsigned musician artists and I have expressed permission, but you can't show that to podcast hosts or the distribution platforms like Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play. How can a podcaster get around this problem? Any ideas? I would just say go to Anchor and say, hey, I've got permission to play this. And that's where I would start. Now, they are owned by Spotify, and Spotify does not want music podcasts. They just don't. They if you want to listen to music, they want you to listen to music, as in the actual song, that whole 9 yards. But they are not fans of, being your own DJ and here's my favorite electric blues tunes. They're not a fan of that at all. So other than that, it's, there was a whole thing on YouTube where really popular YouTubers are having stuff pulled down, and it's so obvious that it's education. There's a guy, I forget his name, but he does Why Is This Song Great? And he picks up, I don't know how he ends up with the multi-track versions of these songs. He's like, here, listen to the drum beat. Okay, listen to this piano part. And it's awesome. It's super duper education, which is covered under that stupid legal thing that I can't think of, fair use. But they said when you go to, if you go to fight YouTube and say, hey, you've taken on the show, if you contest it, they say, well, okay, we will look at this.
Yeah.
But in the event that like you're wrong, you might lose your whole channel, which does not really open up a environment of dialogue. So most people are just like, I'm not going to even bother with it. So I don't know. The music thing is weird. That needs figured out.
We posted a video on the Gallup side from one of our own events, and we had been, we'd had some bumper music in the event that they didn't intend for that bumper music to make the video, but it was playing in the background. Is the person was coming on the stage, the bumper music. Well, that's all licensed. We license it for that, but it's not licensed for YouTube, right? That music's not licensed for YouTube. And so the video editor who posted it didn't even think that. They're like, oh, like this music is, so of course we got a strike on it, and hey, there's some copyrighted content. Now YouTube's got some options. They'll go in and silence it for you. So there's some options of like, hey, this is copyrighted. What do you want to do? And one of them is remove it, and you can click it, and they'll, through their software, mute that. It mutes everything, but it mutes during that time. So you have some options on YouTube. It's a weird world right now. If you have a really good YouTube channel, I just would avoid music altogether.
Period. Yeah. Not really needed.
Or just use the stuff that YouTube provides. And there are some services that are YouTube friendly that are out there where you can get music from and such. So there is some of that, but man, it's complicated.
Yeah, Rick Beato is the guy that does the Why Is This Song Great channel. It's a really good guy. John says you can legally stream, is the key word there. Stream music video podcasts on Mixcloud. The only legal place that I know of to do it, but you have to work hard to drive an audience there. Yeah, it's basically like Live 365. And the key there is it's streaming. You're not downloading it. For whatever reason, when it's downloadable, all the rules change because you now have a physical copy of it, and you get into mechanical rights and things like that. I was talking, one of the women on the Podcasters Roundtable does a music show. She does it on Mixcloud, and she was saying Mixcloud is looking into becoming kind of a media host and having it download. I'm like, as soon as they do, they're screwed. I'm like, the rules have not changed yet. And just about the time you think you got the whole music thing moving in the right direction, you go, oh, that's just for the US. And that's where you'd have to get all the music industry around the globe would have to come together. And I know Doug over at Podcast Music or Pod Music or something like that is trying. He's inching it along, but we just got a long way. And hence I agree with Jim. I'm like, I buy my royalty-free music. I use, 10 seconds of it, if that. Not that you can, the length of music has nothing to do with if it's legal or not, by the way. Some people are like, oh, I only use 6 seconds.
Right.
No, doesn't matter. So anyway, Jim, Microsoft Mixer.
It is. Yeah, it's going away.
What is it?
They're crushing it. So Microsoft, it's their version of Twitch. Microsoft bought that several years ago. I forget what there was another name for it. Bangs will know. And they bought it in to compete with Twitch, and it just hasn't really gone very well for Microsoft. Microsoft, if it doesn't become $1 billion division,
Right.
they're not interested. And so they're killing it July 22nd. So it'll go away. So don't always say it's only Google who kills things.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Dave says, anybody use Soundwise? Seems to work well for me for informal audio programs, training, even private stuff. Never heard of it. I did sign up for a free Memberful account just to kick the tires on it. It seems interesting. Let me see if I can log in. And what you end up doing is, because what I was looking into is like, what is a private RSS feed? Let me do this. Yeah, this is the back end of Memberful. So I have a free account. And basically what you do is, if you had people sign up, all I'm looking for is, if I did a podcast, what you do is you put in an RSS feed, and that RSS feed should be something like they're recommending Transistor and Acast, because you can actually have a private feed. And if you're not using them, like if I was using Libsyn or somebody, I would just pick an RSS feed and not like, it would be hkmybxw.libsyn.com/RSS. And then you'd make you basically want not easy to guess locations, because it is kind of security through obscurity with that situation. But it's interesting. So I've been playing with it because they're advertised everywhere. They're knocking on my door saying, hey, would you like to advertise on the School of Podcasting? And I'm just trying to figure out, apparently you can also embed things on your website. So if you want to do that, you can have coupons. So I might play with this a little bit. It looks, because it's the other thing I'm noticing is all the other ones are, it's a, like everybody's launching these things. Like I haven't heard of Soundwise. I'll have to go check them out. But there still is Glow.fm. I interviewed the CEO a while back. They've now changed to a whole enterprise thing. It's $300 a month. It used to be 55 cents per user. And I was like, So that's kind of interesting that they've changed. But I've heard so much about Memberful because they're advertising on everybody. And I was like, well, I've already got right now, I have Focusrite till the end of the month. And I kind of get weird when I have sponsors on the School of Podcasting because I'm already pimping my stuff, but I just try to make if I do take ads, I do my best to keep those at 30 seconds and get in and get out. But so that's a tool I'm playing with. Also, if you are a member, if you're a awesome supporter, today at 1:00, there's a private Q&A time with the members of the School of Podcasting. So I'll be interested to see how that works now that we're like smack dab in the middle of summer and it's nice outside. I get the feeling I'm going to be playing a lot of guitar at 1:00 today.
Waiting for people to show up.
Yeah, which is fine. I get that. I did find a weird glitch in SoundCloud. SoundCloud, really, Dave? In StreamYard. Everything starts with an S. Spotify, Soundwise. But when I uploaded the episode 300 background, that little bubble that pops up that says upload background, like the whatever you call that, the little pop-up thing, has been sitting here on top of my chat the entire thing. I cannot figure out how, short of refreshing the screen, I can't do that. Coach Dave says, I would put my main show on Soundwise, but if you make a lot of audio content, it's a great way to get stuff in front of smaller audiences. Soundwise. Is it soundwise.com? This is really not ringing any kind of bell. Soundwise.com. Let's see here. What comes up? Whatever their website is, it's not fast loading. I can say that. We're still thinking about it. Or is it soundwise.io or because it's definitely, if it's soundwise.com, I'm already like, yeah, okay, not good. So interesting. Have you ever heard of it, Jim?
No. I have not. I was trying to do some lookup. I was watching a YouTube video this week. I was trying to find this site, and they had some music in it that was really good. And I was like, okay, that can't be the standard YouTube music. And went into their show description and saw that they put the license for the music in the description to the site. And so I went to the site, and I'm trying to remember what it is now. I'm trying to find it in my history, but I can't do it. So there are some music services, external music services as well, I think, that are good. This couple that I watched, they're building a home out. They're like homesteading kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think they have 500,000 subscribers. And so like all of a sudden those numbers start getting pretty crazy when you start thinking about like, if their channel got demonetized because they made a mistake in a video, that's significant. They get some significant ad revenue from that. So maybe I'll dig that up for next week's show. It's one I had never heard of before, but I think more and more because of YouTube and the bigger personalities that are really getting big on YouTube, I think there's more of these services that are popping up.
Yeah, there are tons. Here's another one, podmatch.com. It's, the painless match ideal podcast guests and hosts together to produce high quality interviews. And this guy approached me, and he's ever so passive aggressively trying to get on my show. He's a nice guy, but he's kind of like, how do I grow this? And I'm like, Facebook ads, Facebook groups, sponsor events. Like, how do you get the word out about a service? It's a business. You promote it, And I asked him, I'm like, what makes this any different than the other 5 that I can think of? And he kind of just said, we have great guests and we have great podcasters. And I'm like, pretty sure the other ones say the same thing. So I'm trying to figure out, I'll probably sign up for it because I am trying to book a book tour, but I'm kind of like, what do you think of when you see these things?
What do you mean?
Like, the whole go here to find guests, go here to be found.
I think they're fine.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fine
at this point.
If they work for you, then awesome. I found it. Music Bed is the site that I found too. I'm sharing that on my screen. They had gotten a really cool song that sounded pro, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so you can subscribe. They have a personal plan, nonprofit, wedding, business, and an enterprise plan, and then a bunch of where you're streaming it, and you can buy a single song out here if you want to. So they've got some pretty good. So Music Bed. Yeah, musicbed.com would get you there. Kind of interesting. I haven't dug into it. I'm not a big music guy, so I don't do this, but I like that song so much. I was like, who sings this?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't find it. So I used on Siri, I used the what am I listening to? So I played the YouTube video and then, said, hey, S woman, what am I listening to? And it listens and then it says, oh, it's this song. And so I went and directed me to the Music Bed site and saw it. I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. That here on Music Bed, that song, they had a full version of it. They had a shortened version of it. They had a music only version of it, just instrumental. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. It's apparently YouTube friendly. So you can embed these in on YouTube and not get knocked.
Nice.
Yeah.
Carrie asks, is there any kind of YouTube school similar to School of Podcasting? I love video creators. I think it's just videocreators.com. The guy that started off putting videos online to talk to his girlfriend, if I remember right. And then eventually they got engaged. So they announced their engagement on YouTube. Yeah, videocreators.com. Tim Schmoyer, I believe is his name. He's got a great channel with a lot of free stuff. Yep. I went through that. It's not cheap, but it's definitely, they really get into, I loved, cause it's multiple weeks. If you go into their one program, he's got a thing, 30 days to a better YouTube channel. That's good. He's a guy that gets it. It's all about serving your audience. And he's also about, knowing your why. It's very similar to podcasting. Content creation is content creation. It's just a matter of, over their headlines are even more important. But he also talks about, it's not about tags. It's not about, he goes, it's about making content that people will watch. And he goes, and when people watch your stuff and YouTube says, wow, that's weird. Every time somebody goes here, they stay for the whole 5 minutes. And then when the next video comes up of theirs, they stay even more. He goes, YouTube watches that. He goes, it's really about making good content. He goes, yes, tags and thumbnails and things like that help. He goes, but in the end, it really comes down to who is your audience? Why are you doing this? How are you serving them? That kind of thing. But he's a good guy.
I've heard likes are getting more and more important on YouTube.
I think it's either likes or dislikes.
Yeah.
I've heard that because I know Bandrew always says, if you like it, give me a thumbs up. If you hate it, it's just showing that people are, Well,
I'm hearing more and more YouTubers. Oh, by the way, YouTube has their own academy that you should, if you haven't gone through it, it's free. And there's tons of content of them telling you, I mean, it's pretty good. And they kind of give you some clues on how to interact with YouTube. I mean, that if you haven't gone through YouTube stuff, that would be a good idea.
There's a lot of stuff. What's the other one? It's a YouTube thing. Not YouTube, it's Google. Analytics. There's an analytics academy that's free. That's so all that free stuff that we all kind of like. And a lot of times we're just looking for somebody to shorten up the learning curve. It's like, I don't want to have to sit through 80 videos. But yeah, creatoracademy.youtube.com. There you go.
I've been watching some of the young YouTubers who are willing to do the legwork to figure out this system, and many of them are so emphasizing likes. They're like please like this, and so I just get this feeling that the kind of the general trend is to get more of those likes. I've started on the Gallup side. I've started asking for likes up front when we go live. Hey, like the live channel. If you want to help us get better known, like it, and YouTube will expose it more to people. So
there you go. Yeah. She says it feels like that would round out my online marketing trifecta: podcasting, email marketing, and now video marketing. Those are the three. Some people like to read, some people like to listen, and some people like to watch.
I only watch YouTube right now. I'm a YouTube only.
I rarely watch TV of any kind anymore. And when I added YouTube to my Amazon Fire Stick thing, which is in my TV, I watch YouTube at lunch now. I go through and see who I've subscribed to and kind of go like there. But Brandon says, could that be a myth? Like asking for podcast reviews?
Could, but I don't. Yeah, it could be. But let's just test it out. Like everybody who's watching right now. I'm gonna be a YouTuber. Let's test it out. Everybody who's listening right now, like us. It's going to be over here. Down there, like it.
And then go to askthepodcastcoach.com/subscribe and leave us a rating in Apple, because it helps us get found. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's still it inflates our ego.
Yes. Wouldn't it be great? Please go over to applepodcast.com and leave me a 5-star review and tell me how great it is, because I need a hug.
Leave any star review. It just inflates our ego. So if you head over, just like it and then spend some time. We're going to wrap up this post show anyways.
Yeah.
Head over there when you got a few minutes and like it, and leave us a review. We prefer 5 stars, but if it can only be 4, that's okay, I guess.
Yes. Smash the like button.
Oh yeah.
And the subscribe button.
And subscribe, and make sure you click the notification bell.
That's right. Exactly. With the animated GIF behind me as I say it.
I'm seeing a lot more of those, by the way, during a mid-show graphics popping up on YouTube, where it shows it'll pop up in the video and it'll show that subscribe button and then somebody going over and clicking on it. Like just a reminder, and there's a little ding there. Ding. Yeah. So I'm seeing more of that too in the videos.
This will be I realize we got to go here. Somebody asked that if I live stream this to YouTube and then I want to edit it later, so I download the file. I wish YouTube would allow us to replace files, but they don't.
No, that would be great, wouldn't it?
So you upload it again, you've lost all your likes. Is it worth it? And I'm like,
yes, it is. It is. Anything on YouTube is worth it. So you shouldn't.
But I take down my full version, put up the edited version.
Leave them both up.
Leave them both up?
Just leave them both up. Just be really, really clear what it is. That this is this is the live unedited version. I start every live show by saying this is the live unedited edition of Called the Coach or Theme Thursday or not Ask Podcast Coach, but and just to let the YouTube audience know they're coming into a live recorded show. And then we just leave it. We have a live channel where all the live stuff. Some people just prefer the live stuff, and we just leave it there. It's on its own channel. It's live only. Then we edit that and post that to our edited channel. What would you call it? The Clifton Strengths channel or the Home Gadget Geeks channel or whatever. And I leave both. You never know. You never know when that thing's going to come up. I agree with you. I'd love to replace in some regards to keep the stats. Yeah. But in some ways, Dave, it gives me the ability to compare stats of live versus edited. So maybe I wouldn't want to replace it just to be 100%. Stargate Pioneer was the one initially. I was doing the same thing on Spreaker for the longest time, where I was leaving the Spreaker live and then not replacing it, but just adding a new one. He's like, dude, did you know you could replace it and keep all the stats?
Yeah.
So I started doing that on Spreaker, but
I think the difference is, if you think about it, YouTube you can see how far somebody listened. So now if I had a 15-minute video, I edit it. Now it's 13 and a half minutes. It's going to mess up maybe the stats because.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. That would skew when you have stats, when you have interstitial. I just made that word up. When you have interstitial, didn't that sound good? Stats. Okay, it's not even a word.
It also sounds like somebody's middle name from the 1800s. His name was Zebediah Interstitial Jones.
Yeah, it would mess up the timing on those. On those.
That's probably why.
That kind of makes sense. Bang says make it private. You could make that.
Yeah.
Although private on YouTube is ugly. It's ugly. So I don't, unlisted is kind of where I've kind of landed for those things I want to hide for the most part. But
I'm seeing a lot of people that are doing membership sites and using unlisted YouTube videos because it's free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, because you can still share those. And I'm like,
you can, but is it worth it? I mean, like,
that's it.
We do this from time to time where we make stuff. We kind of hide it. It's security by obscurity, and we just kind of hide it. If somebody shares it, it's fine, but we don't care. It's still going to be. It's semi-private. It's like semi-private. You know,
that's it.
It's private light. I guess is what you're going to call it. But for things like that, we don't care. I think if you want to really lock things behind a paywall, you're going to have to pay for a membership site to do it that way.
That's it. So. All right, y'all.
Another week.
Next week, July 4th.
We're on the backside of 2020. Let's all just hope that the second half of 2020 does not come with the excitement. I could use a really boring third and fourth quarter of 2020.
Yeah. And also, don't light sparklers in the house.
You don't.
Yeah.
Or many sparklers together. Or those kind. I am going to pick up some smoke bombs. We're having some mole problems. And I'm going through a progression of, first it was like sonic stuff and then it was water. And now I'm putting the poison stuff in the holes, and it's 4th of July. I can buy smoke bombs. Why would I not light smoke bombs and put them in the hole?
I have this whole mental picture of you now as Carl Spackler. Yeah. All right, Mole, I'm going to get you. That's it.
It is Caddyshack related. It's just dry. This is the year. In years past, I just smashed the holes down and I didn't care.
Right.
But this year, I'm like, I am eradicating, because I've been home. The yard looks great, and I am not going to let those moles mess up my yard. I'm going DEFCON 2, quite possibly this week with smoke.
Take video of that, by the way.
Yeah, totally. DEFCON 1, by the way, is full digging the things out. Like we're going, because you know where they are. So if they, I've gotten a lot of Caddyshack references. I talked about this on Home Gadget Geeks too. I'm going to get the shovel. We're getting to the bottom of it, and it's going to just be like Caddyshack, just like Caddyshack. Cinderella story.
You got all of that one. All right, so don't get me going on Carl.
Some really good Bill Murray. Really good.
And especially when half that was improvised. So anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, is there danger in lighting a smoke bomb and dropping it in a hole? Gas line?
I guess you'll find out.
Well, here we go.
Maybe. Yeah.
Here we go. All right, Dave. We'll see you next week.
All right. We'll see you.
See you guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.